Welcome to the Gold Standard. Good Wednesday morning. I am Braden Gall. You can get to me on Twitter and or other social medias, the social media at Braden Gall.
And I'm Emma Lingan. You can get to me at Emma_Lingan.
We have lots to discuss today, Emma. The Preds have not won a game in 8 tries. We were talking about the hot seat for Andrew Brunette last week on the show. Some of the different things, the different angles that go into this. And, of course, they lost 3 straight on the road, 2 to awful teams, Montreal and Ottawa, in largely lackluster fashion. They were significantly better on offense at home against Calgary on Tuesday evening, and they still gave up 3 leads on Tuesday night at Bridgestone Arena in front of how many fans would you say, Emma? What's the percentage? Give me the ballpark, because even my daughter, my 8-year-old, looked at the game in the first period and said, "There's a lot of empty seats, Dad." And I said, tune in tomorrow, honey.
There were, in fact, many empty seats there, yes. But I think that could be attributed to a few things, not the least of which is that it was a Tuesday in December.
55 degrees, though. It was nice out. It's cold today, but it was nice yesterday. All right, we got lots of stuff to do today. Despite the awful team, I enjoy your show. Thanks, Nate. Try to have a good show today. Is there room for sports therapy? Always. That's what the comment section is for on just the internet in general, but certainly this show. We are, of course, brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. We've got lots of stuff for you guys today. We got lots of video. Emma got some post-game from Jonathan Marsh's show that we're going to play for you guys coming up. We also had the actual video of Andrew Brunette's comments about scratching the entire team. I think it is important to watch the conversation happen and not just read a clip that's on the internet, in particular on social media. We also had a chance to talk to him about, at the press conference on Tuesday morning before the game, about the changes he's making to the scheme and sort of what those changes are. We saw some of them, I think, come to the surface on Tuesday evening. So a lot of stuff to get to. And then I think, look, he's squarely on the hot seat. There is a conversation to be had about that. I think the new angle on that for me is sort of let's work through what a change would look like hypothetically if you were going to go with a youth movement and Carl Taylor, in which case that dictates some of your decision making, I think, from a time standpoint. So we'll get to all of that coming up. So lots of stuff to do on the show today. Should we do the entire show, Emma, in the Brooks Bratton post-game locker room loss voice? Should we do that?
What would your impression of that be?
I haven't practiced, so this is a problem.
Wow.
I didn't think this all the way through, but it's just sort of just like, so didn't score a goal against Montreal. That's a bummer. You scored 1 with like a minute 56 to go in the Ottawa game. Just like how are you feeling right now? Like,
good.
I don't know. That wasn't that great. But in true Brooks fashion, he got the Marsha Show conversation started last night, and very, very. Listen, I understand. You can describe the locker room in just a second. However, if you work with people and you want to give a Christmas gift to work people, which I think is a smart thing to do. People that work for you, people that work around you, your peers, not just your friends and family and in-laws. Sinkers Beverages is a phenomenal place to go pick out a fancy bottle of champagne. My guy Grant, who's a huge Preds fan and a subscriber to Lower Broad Hockey, I go in there all the time. I've been shopping there for years. He is a champagne expert, a bubbles expert. It is a fantastic gift if you are looking to give something small but like thoughtful. They've got huge ranges all the way up to like, over $100, but really they've got really good stuff in like that $30 range, which is like a sign, I think, Emma, that you like, hey, I care about you enough to not buy you a $12 bottle of Brut. But like they've got a lot of great selection there. They got stuff from France. They got stuff from California. They got stuff from Oregon. They got all different flavors. I don't know anything about it, Emma. You strike me as a champagne person. Do you like champagne?
I love champagne. Listen, anything with bubbles, champagne, Prosecco. Listen, a mimosa hates to see me coming. I'll tell you that.
Sparkling rosé.
Oh yeah, I like a good sparkling rosé.
I can't mix orange juice with the sparkling rosé though. That's the problem.
No.
Now here's the follow-up question. Go to Sinkers Beverages. Search Uber Eats Sinkers Beverages, because I am also a bit of a champagne girl as well. I don't drink a lot of wine at all. I don't know anything about it, and I'm not saying I know anything about champagne. Here's the question: what is your orange juice to champagne ratio? This is an important question for us to stay friends.
I think it's like there's a video. I mean, there's so many versions of this now around on social media where it's like how to make the perfect mimosa. And it's like a regular glass of champagne and then just like a spray bottle, just like one like spritz of orange juice, like in the vicinity of the champagne.
Just wave the open orange juice bottle over the top of the glass.
No, yeah, I would say like when actually I am having brunch this weekend with some friends and I am bringing the mimosa supplies. And so I will just say that my ratio of what I'm bringing is heavily in favor of the champagne over the orange juice.
I am like a 90-10 guy, maybe even like a 95-5 guy. Like I want more than a viral Instagram spray bottle, but like I want like just give me like a little dollop there and we're good to go.
I think of it as like adding creamer to coffee.
I totally agree. Totally agree. So but if you can't see through the glass, it's too much orange juice.
Oh yeah.
Too much orange juice. Anyway, champagne, great deal. And, for all those supplies, go swing by Sinker's Beverages. And for those of you who don't drink champagne and orange juice and only want smoked meats and beer, Sinker's has you covered there. And then Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, of course, has you covered as well. 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Wednesday through Sunday. Opens. They start today on Wednesday, and they are open all through Sunday and just until supplies last. So until that meat is gone every day, they will sell it to you. Okay. All right. Do you want to start with? Let's start with the post game and your conversation with Jonathan Marshall show. It was a scrum after the game in the locker room. There's a question in here, I think, from Brooks, and there's a question about Josi's injury, which we're going to get to, of course, today on the show. Do you want to set up your question in terms of what you asked him, and we'll fire the video here in just a second.
Yeah, I think, obviously his line, Marchessault's line, kind of that last minute top line with him and Forsberg and Stamkos, for being formed at the last minute like that. They were clicking really well, like just looked really solid, had some really good chemistry and had, set him up to score on 2 excellent passing plays. And I think that that's what we have not been seeing from this team at all. And so it looked like clearly something was working tonight or last night. And I asked him, first he made a comment or a response to an earlier question saying that, I think honestly, it's just better when we keep it simple. We don't overthink it. We are just direct. We do the things, it's really, we don't try to complicate it too much. And so I followed up and said, okay, so when you say that, is that sort of a comment about the system? Is that a systematic thing, or is it like you and Forsberg and Stamkos specifically, like the 3 of you work together best when you're doing that? Or do you think that it's everyone that kind of works better that way?
All right, here was his answer to that question and comments on the injury stuff as well.
I think it's everybody. I think everybody needs to be a little bit more, like sometimes we got to use the width of the ice, but sometimes we got to go south to north a little bit faster. And it's not only on the defenseman to make the right play, it's on the forward to give options to our defenseman quicker. And I think that's something that as a unit of 5 on the ice, we can be a little better.
When things are going like this, how do you just keep finding ways to try to push and just find a way to get it done?
I mean, it's a tough league. I mean, there's 30 good teams in the NHL, and every night you can't say who's going to win or lose. So I think that's the beauty of it. And I mean, something I realized with time is it never gets easier. So you got to embrace the grind and embrace the adversity that you face as a individual and as a team also. And I think that's how you can come out on top and come out bigger.
You guys keep losing players for various reasons. How much more difficult does that make it to try to crawl out of this losing stretch?
Yeah, obviously it's tough. I mean, Roman Josi, it's a tough task to replace. Obviously, Gus and Factor are a big part also. I mean, it's not ideal, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's an opportunity for a guy to make their name in the NHL, and I mean, that's how I made my name in the NHL. Injuries happen, and I jumped on and started playing more regularly. And you gotta, opportunities that don't show up like every game or every year. So it's whoever's ready to take control of their careers and of their destiny. And I think it's I like to see like situation like that for young guys that come in, and you gotta take advantage of your situation, because in life you probably sometimes you get just one, so it's on them to make the most of it.
A philosophical Jonathan Marchessault show after the game on the role of hockey players and your opportunities, and I thought that was interesting. A very interesting, I thought, thoughtful answer to a question about injuries and just about guys going down. And we'll get to the injuries. Obviously, Roman Josi left after the first period, did not play in the second or third period. Looks like a lower body injury. I don't believe, Emma, that we've at time of taping that we've got any update from the team. And I checked the email right before we went on, so I haven't gotten anything yet. Of course, Ryan O'Reilly and Jeremy Lauzon were skating yesterday on Tuesday morning before the game. Ryan O'Reilly, it appears to be maybe closer. Lauzon, I guess, getting closer. Alex Carrier went out on the road trip. Gus Nyquist out with an illness last minute. Now Roman Josi is out. Skeleton crew, but he's not wrong. And I think he's not calling people out is not the right word for what he did. He's sort of like telling folks, like, this is what needs to be done. And you now have an opportunity to come up here and do something for yourself and for the team. And that is a sign of leadership to some degree. He certainly was a leader in French over the weekend, which we can get to as well. But I think that's sort of a leadership comment, to be honest with you, that, hey, you got an opportunity, young guy. Come on up and show what you got, because we need you right now.
Yeah. I think that it was a very insightful comment for him to make, and for him to say, especially as an undrafted guy, just to be like, hey, yeah, this is how I got my shot. And yeah, I think that, but we also talked to Philip Forsberg after the game, and he said a similar thing, and Andrew Brunette did too. It's like, Roman Josi, you don't just replace him. It's not just like, especially when he's the guy. I was thinking about this watching last night, and it just feels like in the past, whenever a defenseman has gone down mid-game, like out with an injury, Roman is usually the guy who's out there double shifting to make up for that. And then it's like, oh, crap. Well, now Roman's gone. And so, I mean, I was very impressed personally. They had, they kind of did it by committee. Instead, I was thinking maybe it would be like, oh, they'll have Shea out there double shifting for Josi, but kind of did it by committee. It was a little bit of Shea, a little bit of Willsby, a little bit of Blankenberg. And honestly, I was really impressed, particularly with Willsby, for how he handled it, for being such a young guy. I think that, he handled that really, really well.
Yeah, I think the injuries thing is just unfortunate. It does, I think, cloud how we evaluate the team and how we evaluate Andrew Brunette and how we evaluate the system and their performances. But like, honestly, that's just a part of the game. So you don't get to say like, oh, well, don't make a coaching change because Roman Josi got hurt. Like, you kind of have to see through it if you're Barry Trotz. And we'll get to all of that coaching stuff in a minute. But you have to kind of see through it, because you can't, like, they played well. They played better on Tuesday night. And they still gave up the lead 3 times at home and lost a game. Didn't get a point out of the deal. 8 straight. Like, like, you can say all this stuff, and we're going to hear from Brunette talking about the tweaks and the scratches and all that stuff. But like, eventually, like, and to your point, asking Marchessault about the connectivity and sort of how it worked, and he's not wrong. I did think there was some. They did come out a little flat, I thought, in the first period, but then it changed quickly when you started seeing passing and puck movement. Shocking. In the first 2 periods, they scored goals because of puck movement. And that's something that I was really watching, especially with the Stars going into this game, because I was concerned that the Stars were not trusting the system, not trusting their teammates, and feeling like they had to do too much, which is very normal for Roman Josi and Philip Forsberg and Stamkos. I thought they moved the puck a lot better, and that's what resulted in some of those goals that they scored.
Yeah, puck movement, but I would also just say in general, decision making with the puck, because that had been something that was very concerning to me, honestly, just watching. It's like, how many times this year have we seen guys just like skate the puck into the zone and then stop? Or they skated into the zone, they forget why they're there, and they panic and pass it to someone. Or, you got a clear path to the net, and instead you turn and pass it to the guy who's got 2 defenders on him. It's like the decision making was what was concerning to me. And we saw much better decision making. It's like, yeah, when there's a guy in front of the net with an open shot, pass to him. It's not that hard. We don't need to complicate it any more than that. And they were just doing the logical things. And what do you know? It resulted in scoring goals. I mean, again, like you said, though, puck movement on both of Marchessault's goals and Tommy Novak's goal. Beautiful play, drop pass from Mark Jankowski there to set that one up. And it was just, it flowed a lot better. So like you're seeing more of what we expected out of this team offensively, still lacking defensively. Again, it was unfortunate that with the late injuries and illnesses and whatever, it was the cobbled together lines. The second line of Parsonen, Svechkov, Leroux, they got rocked a little bit last night defensively. And you know what? It happens, I think, but that's important for young players and guys coming up in this league to get that experience. Because that's how you improve and that makes you stronger. And, it's unfortunate. I know that a lot of Preds fans are like, I don't care about learning experience. I just want to win games. And I get that. But I think that you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, a couple of random observations. How many total games has that line played together? I cannot remember a Preds second line that has played that few number of total games in their entire careers. Basically, basically 3 rookies. I know Parson is not a rookie, but basically. And so fascinating to allow how quickly that the injuries will sort of force a youth movement on your lineup real quickly. I do think Svechkov is continuing to show that he has plenty of upside. I think Zach Leroux is going to be a good player. I think he's a good NHL player, and I think he's an important piece. Every team needs a piece like him. I don't know if he's ever a top 6 guy. I don't, maybe he's a third line winger. Certainly he's doing very well on the fourth line, kind of doing his job. But I think Svechkov's got plenty of upside. He's very intriguing to watch him kind of learn and grow into his skin on the team.
Yeah. You see his confidence growing and you see him getting more comfortable out there. Leroux, I would agree. He, I think, reminds me a lot of Kiefer Sherwood with a little bit more offensive upside. But again, he's done what's asked of him. And a lot of times with young guys, especially, a first round pick like that, you're worried they're going to come in, they're going to try to do too much. And he hasn't done that. I think that he's been a really good role player for this team. And he has, at this point, he's been a fourth line bruiser. He's now on the second line. Again, that line, really, you could tell that they had not played together before, really. But what I will say is a positive, if you want to look at it this way, we're used to the entire team looking like they've never played together. So at least this time it was just the guys who've actually not played together who looked like that. So progress.
Yikes. I will. I do think the Jankowski, Novak, Evangelista line is starting to come together pretty nicely. I feel like those guys are playing well. Michael McCarron, we're going to hear from Andrew about, sort of this. Adam Bingen asked him about the scratching, the decisions to scratch Michael McCarron after a mistake and not to Jonathan Marshall show that led to the sort of scratch comment that got run all over the internet. We'll get to that in just a minute. But, I realize that the penalty kill has been great for this team and that it creates interesting angles when guys sneak in the back door. I just know that that's how that happens. But Michael McCarron, and I cannot remember who was next to him, who was more in the middle of the slot. They weren't guarding anybody. And Huberdeau just slides in behind him and is just standing there unchecked. And at some point, McCarron turns and has him right there and doesn't really attack him much. I know it's bang bang and it's split second, but you got to check your guy you're in a tie game in the third period. Was it late in the second period? Now I can't even remember. You got to go. You got to get that. You got to get that guy's stick out of the crease. And so McCarron, not a great game by him. But
I will also say it was late in the second period, and that penalty kill has been really, really solid. But they're now missing 2 of their top penalty killers, really 3 now that you've got Nyquist was out too. He's been killing penalties as well. So the penalty kill last night, they had Zach Leroux killing penalties. It was kind of just a product of where they were at. So I'm not saying that to completely absolve McCarron of any, wrongdoing there.
Right.
I'm just saying that you can't look at those things in a vacuum.
No, I agree. And I do feel like LaRue should be a good penalty killer, though. Like, I feel like that's a good role for him in theory.
Yes,
so.
but it's a role that he doesn't have as much experience in at this level.
Yes, that's true.
So that, can have a kind of a ripple effect.
I don't know if this is 100% true. Tango says I think it was Brady Shea. But yeah, like there's two guys standing there, and it's one thing if you're on someone, right? It's one thing if someone's come into the crease and you have to step to them. You need to step to the most dangerous person you can find first. That's the order of operations within hockey. It's like, who's the most dangerous right now? You got to get that guy. And they're both kind of just standing there without, and again, that's not how it works. Standing there is not even necessarily fair, but it was a mistake. It was a missed cover, and it led to a game-winning goal, and you lost at home for the eight games without a win. So here, this is where we are. So
can I also say the reason that they were on the penalty kill in the first place? I would love to know what Mark Jankowski said that got him.
Who was not available after the game? Who was not available after the game?
That, in fairness, I did get clarification on that because also in fairness to myself, I had requested him after the first period because that was before he even committed the penalty. I just wanted to talk to him about the play to set up Novak for the goal. And then it was a miscommunication. He ended up not being made available. Typically after losses anyway, they'll usually only make 2 guys available instead of like 3 or 4. So we got Forsberg and Marchessault. But yes, I still, now, again, this isn't even why I wanted to talk to him, but I am just so curious. It's like, I know the kinds of things that get said out there. I mean, that's got to be, the mind boggles.
It's got to be like, it's got to be, there can only be 2 things, right? It's either something incredibly personal about that particular official, which is probably a no-no, or it's got to cross a line into a particular form of language that is a no-no. I can't imagine. Is there anything else it could be other than those 2 things? And I honestly, I doubt it's personal towards the ref. Like I know that they all know each other, but they're not that deep into the weeds on these guys.
Like, I know Jankowski, and I'm not saying we're best friends or anything, but like, I can't picture that. There are some guys on this team that, quite honestly, I'm not saying like, I would expect them to cross a line, but it would be like
Jonathan Marchessault would do it. He would just do it in French. Like,
like you would be less surprised if certain players were to do it than others. But like Mark Jankowski, I was like, what?
No,
so it could just be, I think, a combination of things. Ref could be having a really bad day. I don't know. But then, the way it was scored on the like NHL official score sheet was, I guess, maybe, I don't know actually if this has to do with like the keystroke input, like you have to put who the penalty was against, but it said that it was against Pospisil for Calgary. So I was like, did he say something to a player?
Oh, they have to put, meaning who the penalty was inflicted upon.
Yes. So it's because normally it'll be like so-and-so tripping against so-and-so, but this was like unsportsmanlike conduct against Pospisil.
Maybe it's like a goal where he's like the closest one. And it's just
it could be.
You're the closest one, so
last guy to touch it. Yeah.
No, it's funny. Jankowski's kind of got a baby face, and like I think his personality kind of matches the baby face a little bit. And I think that's what made it. You're right. Like I saw that they were like unsportsmanlike, and he's in the box, and I was like, on Mark Jankowski, really?
Yeah. And it was so like, even when you go back and watch the video again, you there's no like close up view of it, obviously, which is why we're having this conversation. But like, it just looked so brief and so like, he skated back to the bench. He said something, and
he stood up. It looks like he stood up and said it again, though.
Well, I don't know. He still like didn't look overly incensed, I don't think. I mean, any more so than would be expected, but
look, there are certain words that I'm sorry that you're not allowed to say no matter what the situation is.
Yes, but we don't know if he said those words. We don't know that. So.
I hear you, but like it can only be that you cross the line on a personal level, or that you cross the line sort of on a generic threshold of bad word level, and we all know what those words are.
Yes.
depending on who you're directing them towards, and you're not allowed to use those things. Like like my daughters and your co-host Jeremy K. Gover has a lot of experience with this because his son listens to a ton of hip hop, and it's no editing in the car. I'm a no edit dad as well. We don't edit for the kids, and we have to teach our girls, like, there are words you can use in school and with grandma. And then there are words you can use a few more of them with dad and like your friends. Like, we don't care. Learn how to use them correctly. And then there are words you are never allowed to say ever, no matter what's happening in your life. Doesn't matter. Not allowed to say them. I'm not going to tell you what those are because that would complicate this conversation. But you're not allowed to say any of them. All right. So there you go. Injuries, Josi. We'll see what happens. But man, the lineup is going to be real interesting at Dallas and at Colorado coming up. So we shall see. All right, let's talk about the tweaks then, because you asked Marcia Show about it. It certainly looked like there was some results. There have been some mild results over the course of even the last 10 or 12 games based on some of these tweaks. Adam Vingan asked him in the press conference before the game on Tuesday about some of those tweaks, and then I asked him a follow-up to sort of describe those things, and he gave a pretty interesting answer about what they actually were trying to do differently. So here was Andrew Brunette on the tweaks that they have made over the last 10 games or so.
We kind of tweaked it. Probably about 10 games ago, where we just tried to, do a few things to help especially the newer guys, to be a little bit more comfortable. There's things in our game that, it's hard for them to really, grab. So we just try to kind of make it a little bit easier for them. And I think it's paid a little bit of dividends through that stretch. Obviously, we didn't get the results with the goals or the things that we like, but there was some improvements there. And just the last 2 games, I just think what we gave up is a little high.
Can you describe some of those differences in a little bit more detail at all?
The differences?
Yeah, some of the tweaks.
Yeah, I think a little bit on our breakouts. I think we slowed it down a little bit, maybe a little bit under control, maybe a little bit more under, and then maybe a little bit in the offensive zone where we've been a little bit more, maybe a little bit more aggressive, from the back end, trying to sustain pucks. It's a little bit of a slippery slope because when you're an aggressor, you can give up in rushes, right? But I think we're trying to find ways to help us a little bit more and to have the puck more in the offensive zone. Hopefully, I think our offensive zone numbers have been really good, but I think that helps for sure to keep our offensive guys to have the puck a little bit more.
All right, that was Tuesday morning before the game. I think we saw some of that, a more controlled, slower breakout. I think a lot of the conversation, Emma, around this system and the questions about the system are the team trying to leave the defensive zone too fast without helping your goaltender and your defense make sure they've secured the puck, make sure they've gained possession fully, and then creating opportunity. And you heard Marcia Show talk about, we've got to create options for them to move the puck forward. So a little bit slower, more controlled coming out of the zone, and then a little bit more aggressive in the offensive zone from the back end, which, of course, would be the defense. What'd you make of those comments about how it's been effective without the results, and then some of the things that he actually described there that were different? Did you see that on Tuesday night? I think I did.
I did. Yeah. And again, I like that Marcia so specifically said that as well, that, it doesn't just fall on the defenseman, it falls on the forwards, to be able to play that whole 200-foot game. And so I think that I did see it. It was a little bit inconsistent, but that's kind of to be expected. And credit to Andrew Brunette, honestly, because I think he's gotten a lot of, there's been a lot of speculation, and understandably so, that he is a guy who is not willing to deviate from his system. And I think that just the fact that there still might be some truth to that, but I think that the fact that he has made these tweaks and acknowledged that he's made these tweaks shows that, like, he's not a complete, dictator when it comes to this stuff. So I think that we saw a little bit of, the improvements there with the zone entries and things like that, but still, like, it wasn't perfect.
And frankly, even in the very first few minutes, a lot of high danger chances and opportunities for Calgary. So some of that, again, in the second and third period, you could talk about injuries, but eventually you got to do with what you got. And I will say, I think you and Gover talked about this as well, and it's all your fault. Like, the losing the locker room phrase, I think, is used a lot. It's used too much. I don't think he's lost the relationships. I think a lot of people think lose the locker room. There's oh, we don't we don't trust the coach. We don't communicate well with the coach. We're not honest with each other. We're not transparent with each other, like blah, 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 blah. I think it's more about the system being a part of the flaw and a part of the problem. And again, if he just made changes 10 games ago, what happened in the first 18? Why did it take you so long to make any of these potential adjustments? Because you're starting to see some results, not good enough. But I think so. I think that's the thing. Like, you're not losing the locker room. I don't think that's a thing. But I do think there's a disconnect between the system and the players trusting the system. Whether you're young, Brunette said it. Hey, some of the stuff is more complicated for young guys, and they're not. We need to kind of slow it down for them. Versus the older guys maybe not being fast enough to play in the system. Like, I don't know what it is, but I think the thing that I've been trying to figure out since the beginning of the year, Emma, is like, how do you describe what the identity of this system is? And it feels like the identity of the system has never taken shape in the season so far. And I don't know if that's personnel. I don't know if that's Andrew Brunette's inability to adapt. I don't know what it is, but it's getting better. But how many times can you say it's getting better and then lose without getting 2 points for the 8th straight game? Like, it has to get results eventually.
Listen, it wasn't perfect. I mean, again, they gave up the lead 3 times. And so, but they also had a lead 3 times. That's an improvement. So I think that, they have dug themselves into a very deep hole here, and you're not going to just be able to pop out of it in one game. Like, it was a grind to get to where they're at, and they're going to have to grind their way out of it. And that's why, I mean, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but with Andrew Brunette, he's a young coach too. Like, he's got to learn and develop the same way a young player does. And so in regards to his system and what works, what doesn't work with certain players and things like that. So it takes time. People just look at it as so black and white that it's like, all right, it's got to be amazing, or they've got to fire the coach, and there's no in between. And it's like, no, there is a third option. The third option is you freaking work through it. Like, again,
fans aren't going to want to hear that, though. You know that. I
know, but hey, listen, apparently my specialty is saying things that fans don't want to hear, but they're things that they need to hear, and I stand by them. I understand. I'm not saying that fans shouldn't be frustrated watching this team. I absolutely agree. You should be. I think of it as like, actually, Gover and I kind of made this analogy a little bit, where it's like when you're in a relationship, it's like if you had like one argument and it was a really bad argument with your wife, and then just said, okay, one argument, time to get divorced. It's like, what? No, you don't even try. You don't even try to like work through this to see, because it's just like, I don't know. It just seems like there's too much at stake here, and too much that is unknown about this team that you need to, try and work through it.
Emma, my wife was hanging ornaments on the Christmas tree, and she stumbled on one that she gave me 11 years ago and had to stop and say, oh my God, it's been 11 years. And I'm happy to report, never had an argument in 11 years.
Never. Wow.
Imagine that with me.
Yeah.
I've been on my best behavior for 11 years.
No, but again, it's just like, every good relationship has rough patches, and you work through them. And if you can't, you don't abandon the relationship until you have tried to work through them, and then trying, we're not successful. So I just think it's going to take more time than people want. And I get it, but.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to talk Bruno, and there's a couple other angles to the conversation because hot seat's just there. There's only so much yelling. Hey, I think they should fire the coach. Like, there's hot take radio for that. We're going to try to have some more nuanced conversations about some of the strategies, some of the things that are going through Barry Trotz's head on, watching a team that, again, is the worst team in the NHL, the worst offense in the NHL, last place, fewest wins, longest winless streak in, I think, since like 2003 for the team. Back when there were 4 numbers in your record, which is so dumb. I forgot all about that period of time in the NHL. It's like, what? Who thought it was a good idea to put 4 numbers in your win-loss record, which is generally a 2-number thing? So we'll get to that in just a second. However, I want to shout out to our great and amazing local sponsors, 2 huge groups of people that loves Predators hockey, and that is Sinkers, Beverages, and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. The best brisket in the city, as voted on by the Nashville scene in the Post and voted on by you. It is spectacular. It's the best brisket I've had in this city. It was fantastic on Thanksgiving. They got Tony's Magic Green Beans, which is my favorite side item. They've got a fantastic mac and cheese. It's got a little spice to it, some pepper in it, of course. So fantastic stuff. And only Wednesday through Sunday, 11 to 3, and a huge supporter of all things Nashville and the community right there in Madison. They are very proud of the fact that their address is in Madison, so I'm going to make sure I get that right. It is technically Madison, but it is right off Briley Parkway by Eastside Bowl, so super accessible for any neighborhood. If you're going up 65, if you're going down Briley, if you're coming out from the east or the west or the north, it's very, very accessible. So Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. And then, of course, Sinkers Beverages, 4-time liquor store of the year if you're in East Nashville. It's super, super close and convenient right there off Gallatin near Inglewood. And you can also have the booze delivered directly to your house. Search Sinkers Beverages on Uber Eats, and they'll deliver the booze right to your house. I'm envisioning, Emma, at your brunch party, like you're going to get to a point where you're going to need some more supplies, and you just hop on the app, boom, deliver those supplies right to the party, because you don't want to be driving, right?
No.
So there you go. Good. One word answer in the ad read. I appreciate that.
I usually don't want to be driving even when I'm sober. So I'm a big Uber Eats fan.
Fair. And of course, if you're in Hendersonville, if you're up north, Goodlettsville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, any of those places, Bluegrass Beverages, over 50 years serving that community. Go support good local businesses. None of those massive national retailers. Go get your meat and your booze from Sinkers Beverages and from Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Some comments here. Let's see. It isn't even close to time to fire Bruno if it's going like this time next year. Okay, interesting. We'll get to the patience in just a second. Mitch says best brisket in Nashville, and it ain't even close. I like that. Let's see here. I'm not gonna Louis. I'm not putting that one up on the screen. You'll have to go watch the YouTube comments if you want to know what he posted. Okay, so I want to play a video of the actual comments from Brunette about the scratch thing. It got all over the internet. I like Alex Stardy. He's a good dude. He should have credited Adam Bingen with the question. To be fair, Andrew Brunette did say it one time quickly in Alex's question, and then what I think is fascinating from a psychology standpoint, felt the need to reiterate it. And then my favorite part of the entire thing was his last line of the entire comment. So I want you guys all to see it, and then we will react. Here was his. It's about McCarron and Marcia Show, and then he gets into we could scratch the whole team. So here's the actual conversation, so you don't take anything out of context.
I think players see it. Players see through a lot of different things. With Margie, I think you're trying to. Be patient with him. You're trying to make him feel comfortable. You're trying to find solutions for him because we're going to need him. With Big Mac, yeah, I'm sure he looks at that saying, well, what happened to me? But Big Mac's game, I think he was -10 at the time too. And, unfortunately, like I said, I could scratch every guy in the team. And is there going to come a time that might? But I think with saying that, I think everybody wants to be held accountable. Everybody wants that, but they don't like it when they're held accountable. And that's where it gets tricky. And when you got a whole team that's probably not playing up to the capabilities or up to the expectations, it's easy to have that excuse, well, how come he's not getting it? And my point to them is, how about you play better?
You can hear me actually like holding in a laugh when he goes, and my point to them is, why don't y'all play better? Which sounds like how a father would talk to his children. Like, you're just at the end of an argument and you're like, I'm done negotiating with terrorists. Y'all two girls, my daughters, why don't y'all just get along? Like, that's how, that's what happens with parents. So that was the entire comment there. I thought it was interesting that he said it twice in two different answers, clearly trying to send a message, even if it is tongue in cheek. And meant to sort of be not like comical, but like it's meant to be a little like, oh yeah, I could scratch them all. Like, it's not meant to be, every one of you guys sucks. Like, it calls out team, but it is a message. It's absolutely a message to the team, and they play better on Tuesday night, but not good enough. So
yeah,
no comment.
I mean, it's kind of, I agree with what you said. I think that as from a larger perspective on comments like this, I think that context is extremely important. And I think that a lot of times, and this is not specific to one person. I think this is just kind of where the media landscape has gone, in such a social first world, that people go for the quick hits and the things that are going to get the reaction. And that quote out of context is certainly going to get a reaction. And of course it blew up, and so a lot of people took it, and even to the point where I actually had people who I know who cover Tampa and Florida who have been around Brunette more, like people reaching out to me saying that doesn't sound like something he'd say at all. And it's like, well, because he didn't. I mean, he technically did say it, but listen to the whole conversation around it. And it's like, oh, yeah, no, that's completely different. And it's like, yes, it is, because context is important. It's important.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't know. Like, I'm not really spending a lot of time on Twitter anymore. So I don't know, like, how, like, what was the art, like, Andrew Brunette fires shots at team? Is that like what people were saying? Like, I don't like, I mean, I do think it was a message to his team. But it was a little bit more lighthearted than that.
But I think, the question, of course, as we saw, was like, well, why, essentially, why do you hold different players to different standards? Like, why are you scratching this guy after a mistake and not this guy? And he goes, well, I mean, theoretically, I could scratch anybody. Like, I could scratch all of them. And you take that in a vacuum and people just see like, oh, he's taking shots at his team, like he's putting down his team and telling. It sounds very almost like Tortorella-ish when it's taken out of context, just to be like, oh yeah, no, they're terrible, screw them. Like it's just
it's more human.
Yeah, like it just
taken in context. I mean, yes. you didn't win a game in 7 straight before when he made that comment. Like, of course you could say like, yeah, we all need to be better. Like, I think he was sending a message, and I think he was meaning to say like, hey, look, all of y'all suck, but he's doing it in a diplomatic way, in a political way, in a non-disrespectful way, and where Tortorella doesn't know any of those words.
Yeah.
Like, in general. Benjamin says, wait, the gold standard cares about context and nuance. I've been misled. I don't appreciate that, Ben, but good to talk to you. Josh says, I'm not one to give up on the season prematurely, but the math that Adam and I went through on Monday was eye-opening, which is they basically have to win like 40 out of 55 games or whatever's left on the schedule. They basically have to go 39 and like 15 the rest of the way if they just want to get to like 98 points, which is where I think they probably have to get to if they want to get to a playoff spot, which is going to bring us to the conversation we're about to have. All right. So I was thinking about like this Brunette and making a move, and like, what is it? What are their goals here? And I've spent a lot of time trying to think through like the long-term versus the short-term ramifications of this. And if you really truly believe that Andrew Brunette can be successful, but just needs a bunch of time, there is a very large statement to your point earlier, Emma. Like, oh, we just needed some time. He's a young coach. Will everybody be patient? That ain't hockey town behavior. Okay. Boston doesn't do that. Toronto doesn't do that. Edmonton doesn't do that. That is not big time hockey town behavior. I'm not saying it's wrong, but that is a small southern medium market behavior in general. That's what that is. It's like the Roy.
That's what Nashville is.
I know.
All southern media market.
But do fans who care deeply, not the casuals, but the ones who are invested in this, don't they deserve better than that? And I'm okay. I was on the air saying this after 2017, like, no, we've arrived. We're a hockey market now. And they've done a lot that behaves like a hockey market. And if they were to keep Andrew Brunette this entire season and finish out of the playoffs and bring him back next year, that's very small market behavior. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that's small market behavior.
Yes, I hear you, but I think like we have to look at an entire body of work, and Barry Trotz right now, his body of work includes the off season that he just had. And no one after that off season thought like, that, like that those weren't good moves. That was a bad play by Trotz. He's not really trying to win. I mean, like, clearly that's the point. And that was the kind of, extreme sort of action that we had been waiting for here. And then, like, that when you said like that, like, a hockey market doesn't behave a certain way. And it's like, okay, well, fans have been waiting for this. They've been waiting for this team to take a clear direction. Barry Trotz did that. And that was a huge departure from the norm here with the offseason that he had and the moves that he made. And so there's, like, I just think that you have to look at that. And so when I say be patient, I don't just mean like, guys, just sit back, let it play out. I'm saying I don't think he's doing that, but I think that you still have to, like, acknowledge the fact that he is trying. And so you can't just, after, I know it feels like a lot, but after 20 something games, you can't just be like, well, this isn't working anymore, never mind, because that reflects badly on him too.
It's very Auburn behavior, and I'm not suggesting that everyone should act like Auburn when it comes to firing coaches or fans acting crazy, but I'm also okay with acting more like a market that demands excellence. And so I agree, there's a fine line between overreaction and quick, knee-jerk reactions, and then also just letting a bad thing stay bad for a while. And I've always said this. I've said this. You guys said it as well. I don't think Andrew Brunette is the only reason that things are going wrong. I don't think he's a bad coach, but it's clearly not working. And that's just a fact. Like, you can't argue the basic facts on this. And so I think what's interesting, I really got to thinking about, like, what are their strategies here if they do decide, like, hey, if they're, as Barry Trotz is sitting around, and he said some stuff on the air this week about being patient as well, which is, I think, smart to note. But I think what's interesting is if you want to go youth, which is absolutely something they could do if they think that the season is, I mean, with the injuries, they might have to. If you're going to go youth and young and kid movement and sort of rebuild, like Barry Trotz has alluded to, I'm not saying that out of context. He said that, hey, if we keep playing like this, I'm going to start the rebuild. Like, I don't know exactly what that means, but he's the one threatening it. If that's the case, then I do feel like Carl Taylor is the answer there, to give him an opportunity, who has a relationship with all these young players, who's developed a lot of the young players, who has been loyal to the organization, whether he's gotten good offers in the offseason or not. And you don't really know what he is from an NHL standpoint. He wants the job, and it's a perfect way for him to audition. But if that's the direction you're going, you are not in any rush to make a move. Because what you probably need to do before all of that is take some time to try to offload anything you can offload contractually. Whether that's Marcia Show, whether that's somebody with a no movement clause, whether that's Nyquist, whether that's Carrier, who's hurt, who needs to be back healthy to be traded. There is no, if you think that youth movement is what I want and Carl Taylor is the right guy for that, which I understand strategically, then I think there's no real actual rush to make the move, because you give yourself time to put things in place to give the young players and the young coach an opportunity to sort of maximize their opportunity whenever that time comes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I think that you can still operate that way and sort of demand more out of your team and out of your organization, but also understand that there are going to be, not everything needs to happen like as a knee-jerk reaction to something going poorly. So yeah, listen, I've gotten a lot of hate for saying that I don't think Brunette should be fired. When I say that, I'm saying I don't think that firing him right now is necessarily going to salvage the season. So again, you don't fire him just to fire him. That would be like a big time hockey market move, but that would also be the move of a team that, I'm sorry, but it's a team that still has a legitimate shot that year. And it just seems like at this point, they either should have done it a while ago, or now you got to wait till the end of the season. So I'm not here to defend him and say that he should never lose his job and he's the best coach ever. But I'm just saying that,
yeah,
I just don't think it's the wisest decision right now, given where this team is and given the plan that Barry Trotz has laid out.
I think, and that's the other side of this, is if you are going to try to go win now, which is getting tougher and tougher by the game, then I understand making the move as soon as possible, because then you need to go get a veteran coach who has got a ton of experience that know's message will land well quickly. No idea that now the problem is you're then risking a ton on the back end. How do you like Gerard Gallant? Like, sure, that'll work short term. That ain't going to work long term. So you have to know what the risk is short term and long term. And so I think if you still think you can salvage the season, which honestly, to Adam's point on Monday and to your point, they may have already crossed that line. Like, they may have already crossed the point where it's not salvageable, which is, again, astonishing, not 30 games into the season, considering the offseason. But if you still think that's the goal, then I think you need to do this as soon as possible. You got to go get the new voice, the new message. And it's not that it's better, it's that it's new. And a lot of times in hockey, new is what works sometimes. And it's not really a knock on any one person. It just sort of is what it is. So that's I don't know. To me, that's where I'm at with that, is what is your strategy moving forward? If you want to get better and go get pieces, a second line center, then you may probably need to make a move as soon as possible, because you need a fresh voice because it's not working. Or if you're going to go super young and you're going to you need time to move those pieces and to put things in place to allow for Carl Taylor to come up and have an interim opportunity and audition for the job for next year. And so I don't know where they're at on that. I mean, I don't know. Trotz wants to win, but he also said like 3 weeks ago that he could start a rebuild process, and it's been nothing but bad hockey since then. So I don't know.
Yeah, but he didn't say like I'm starting the rebuild next week. It means, again, context and nuance, Braden. I think he's saying that like,
I mean, it was a month ago and they've been terrible since.
Yeah, but I mean,
the whole time.
But he said we're going to start that process. We're going to start thinking about it. You don't just start rebuilding immediately with the roster that you have and all of the no movement clauses and everything that comes with it. So I think it's like, that was his way of saying that he's thinking about it. Like, he wants people to know that he's not just blindly sitting back and being like, don't worry guys, it'll all work out. You know, he is very aware of the situation and will start to, think about the future. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I still, to me at this point, this is not the season to fire, or this is not the time in the season to fire Andrew Brunette.
I don't know about that. I'm coming around on it. Tiger says he said Christmas was be his time frame. That we're pretty close to that. This is interesting here because Jesse says everything done now should be setting up for next year, and ultimately the most complicated question that doesn't have an answer, even in Barry Trotz sipping on it. Barry Trotz has got his cocktail, and David Poyle's sitting there with a nice glass of cab, and they're talking it out at the end of the night. Hey, is Andrew Brunette the guy to lead the team long-term start next year? Forget about right now. And if you still think his system is great, that he can replicate what he did the year before, I don't know how you have the answer to that question, because right now he's got 2 seasons, or at least 2 starts to the season, both of which have been terrible. 1 year where they needed an 18-game winning streak to get out of that rut, which is not going to happen again, y'all. I think they get better, but they're not going to win 18 straight. He had opportunities to be named the head coach for the Florida Panthers, and they chose to go a different direction with a veteran coach. I don't know how they know for sure that he's the right guy. And nobody does. I mean, NFL GMs get paid millions of dollars to hire coaches, and then they suck all the time. So it's not like, it's not personal and it's not easy. But I don't know, to Jesse's point about everything setting up for next year, you're sort of, I don't want to say fork in the road here, Emma, but like you got a lot of tough decisions that don't have clear answers when it comes to next year and the team. Yeah. All the same problems are still there.
I mean, listen, like you said before, sometimes you just need new. And that's a totally fine argument. I mean, that's why NHL coaches tend to have, barring a few exceptions, they tend to have pretty short shelf lives. And it's not because they're bad coaches. It's just like you need a new voice, and, guys just kind of hit a wall with whatever team they're with. And so again, I am willing to have that conversation. I'm willing to start having the conversation about Andrew Brunette. Is he the right guy? But I still say you give him the rest of the season and then because again, like you said, there's still so much unknown that you got to figure it out.
And this is what we just will never know until the post-mortem, because that's what happens, after a move happens, the players and the GM and the off-the-record comments start to come on the record, and you start to hear about stuff. And I said this, I think, like, even in the summertime before the season started. The system is supposed to be sort of this unique and quirky thing. I don't say that as a negative. I say that as sort of like that's what worked last year. But if Barry Trotz, who's got a ton of coaching experience, looks at the system and says, I don't know if this can win in the NHL, and people are going to catch up to it, which it appears they have, and players are going to have a tough time adapting to it, and he's not going to be adaptive as he should be, and all this stuff is happening. Sure, they all should be given the chance to work through it, but eventually Barry Trotz just has to say to himself, I don't think this is the system that can win a championship. And if you ever say that to yourself, you're just delaying the inevitable. Even if you don't have a good plan in place, which I normally agree with you on, don't fire someone just to fire someone. Fire someone with a plan. Have a plan when you do that. That's why I'm like, are you getting better? Go hire a veteran coach today. If you're trying to get younger, then execute that plan strategically and get younger, trade pieces that you can, and bring in Carl Taylor for an interim audition.
Well, I think that's kind of what we're saying. It's like, we don't know what the plan is right now. And so that's why I'm hesitant to say, yep, fire him now, because it's like, well, I would want to know what the plan is first. And I don't want to just fire him because you're out of options. I'm not saying don't fire him. I'm just saying if you do, there's got to be a very specific plan in place for how you're going to get out of this and why it isn't working and how you plan to address it. And I think that there may be a plan, and you know what? There may not be the best way to address it available right now. Maybe you have to wait a little bit to get to what you want. And that could be why this is taking so long. Maybe Barry Trotz does have a plan and he has someone in mind or something else, but that person or whatever is not available right now. And so you're not going to just, again, fire someone just to fire someone. So it's like, there's so much that we don't know. And I think that we need to know a little more about what the plan is before we start making these, sweeping generalizations about like the system's bad, it's not working, coach needs to be gone, things like that.
I mean, if you are, giving up on the season is not the right phrase because that has a different connotation. But like, if you are resigned to the fact that you're not going to make the playoffs, let's say, there is some value in letting Brunette coach the entire season, because then definitively, sort of the more data you acquire, the more, to your point, the more you know about this stuff, the more you learn, hey, this system can work, or hey, this system won't work. And so I understand there's value in information and there's value in the data. Asking the fans to be patient about that is brutal. To Brandon's point, I don't want a new coach now because it'll ruin our chances of getting Michael Misa. I don't look. I think the old argument of like tanking, or like the Titans fans are talking about this right now too. It's like that's not really a thing in professional sports. It's more of a thing in other sports that are not football because the contracts are guaranteed, so they don't have to bust it every single snap the way they do in the NFL to keep their jobs. But that's not really a thing. But could it be a side effect of keeping a coach whose system isn't going to work, and it's not the right answer, and then you learn definitively it's not the right answer, and then at the end of the year you're one of the worst 3 teams in the NHL, or right now the worst, and all of a sudden you get a top 3 draft pick out of the deal? Is that a consolation prize? Certainly. Are fans going to be okay with that for 50 more games? I don't know. I also, not to belabor the point, but going back to your patience, like sort of what kind of market are we? I actually like the idea personally of being a more patient and conservative market when it comes to making moves and being aggressive and knee-jerk reaction. I generally lean that way. I think it's just smarter business in theory. But man, this is stunningly bad. Like, this is so unexpected and so unfortunate and so stunning that it's hard to, I don't know. I don't know how much longer they can keep losing games. Like, what is it? 4 wins in 19 games?
Yeah, it's bad.
Absurd.
Listen, it's bad. I'm not saying that it's not that bad, but again, I think the numbers, you have to, again, I go back to the game against Calgary. They looked better. All right. Keeping that in the back pocket, but now they need to keep that going. They need to look better against Dallas. They need to look better against Colorado. Like, even if they're not, the results aren't there. And again, I know that is the last thing fans want to hear, and understandably so. I get it. I don't want to hear that either if I'm a fan of a team. But I think that realistically, again, if you fall in a manhole, you're not just going to be able to hop back out. Like, you got to climb and dig and get out of there little by little. And so I just think that's a realistic way to look at it.
I don't disagree with you. We shall see. We shall see what happens. In the meantime, if you need a drink, Sinkers Beverages has you covered, because if I'm a Preds fan, I'm gonna need a drink. Here's the last thing for you. They lose to Dallas. They lose to Colorado. We come back next week on this show. Where are you at? Is there a number where they get to 13 losses in a row and you're like, okay, I think it's okay to start considering this? Or like, where are you at on that? I'm not trying to hold your feet to the fire here. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I guess, like, it's hard. It's hard because it's like they have played well against good teams in the past, but they have played poorly against bad teams. So it's to me, it's more about quality than quantity. But I understand that's not necessarily how the business works. So yeah, I don't know.
10 games without a win is very real. It's a very real possibility.
It is, but I also just feel like people are getting, I don't know, a lot of people are looking at things and saying, like, this is, they got to win. They've got to win this one. This is the one. Like, this is the must-win game. And we've been saying that for so long now that it's just, like, hard for me to really gauge.
No, they need to win. They have like 8 must-win games in a row. Like, they've got to win 8 to even get back to like close to 500 even.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to take long stretches of good hockey. And I don't know why any fan or anybody else would have any faith in that taking place right now currently. It will get better, but I've been saying that for about 4 straight weeks in a row. So it's going to happen at some point. All right, where can people follow you and read you and listen to you and all that great stuff, Emma? Good stuff today.
You can find me at Emma_Lingan, and you can find my work at the Hockey News and Lower Broad Hockey.
There you go. There you have it. We already have draft talk in the comment section. That's not a good sign in early December that we're talking about the draft. It's just the Titans are doing the same thing. It's not a good thing that the Titans fans have been talking about the draft for like a month now, and we're in December. So, all right. Other than that, Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Remember those 2 great sponsors if you have any needs. Stocking stuffers, by the way, for both. The merchandise is great for both. You can go support good business. Keep those dollars in the community, man. It really matters to folks in our community. Keep it local and keep those dollars moving around inside of our group here. And of course, for liquor and for barbecue, two important things in my life right now. So go check it out. For Emma, I'm Braden. Thanks for listening. We will talk to you guys next week.